welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be using a whole selection of heat embossing techniques to create some cute Christmas cards. And to do that we're going to be using this kit from the latest Crafter's Companion magazine. So this kit is amazing value for money. It all comes in with the magazine. So if you've not seen these magazines before, different companies do them each month. And so this month it's Crafter's Companion, and so you get a magazine with loads of ideas for how to use the kit, and then you also get the kit. So the first thing we've got here is this cute bell die, and it's a really nice size of die. Then we've got this stencil with all of the snowflakes on it, so you could stencil one of the snowflakes, you could stencil the whole lot. We've got this beautiful embossing folder, that's all those sprigs. Then we've got this stamp set which has loads of greetings on, and the scroll. It also has this tree, so you can do it in two colours, so they kind of slot into each other. So it ends up saying, "May your days be merry and bright," which I think is really cute. And then you get the paper pack. This usually comes in the middle of the magazine, and you can see we've got loads of cut apart pieces on this front one, and they're all double-sided. I think this is a really nice background sheet. Another kind of different colour of that background sheet, and some more cut aparts. And again another different colour and some more cut aparts. You get tons of cut aparts in this, but you also get these gorgeous full-on pages as well. I really like this one with the trees and the bells. So usually in these packs you get two of each, but this one is a full pack of completely different images. That's really nice. So let's get on and make some cards. So for this first card we're going to do a gatefold card. So I've got a 10 by 5 inch card, and I'm going to score that at 2.5 inches and at 7.5 inches, and then I'm going to fold those edges in. So then I'm going to add my stencil over the top, and then I'm just going to tape that down. And I'm going to grab some of my Wow ink pad refill and take this piece off. It's got like a rollerball attachment that you can take off. And then I'm just going to add a little to this block. So I'm going to grab my little sponge dauber, and I'm going to just put a little bit of the refill on. I don't want too much because otherwise it's going to kind of splodge, and I want a nice crisp finish. So then I'm just going to daub that through the snowflakes. So then I can take the stencil off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this piece of tape round and put it into there to hold that side down, and another piece for the other side. And then I'm going to take metallic copper, polished gold and polished silver embossing powders from Wow. I'm going to start with the silver. I'm just going to cover a section at the top, and then I'm going to pour that across the card. Because what I'm wanting to do is create a kind of ombre effect to it. So then I'm going to go with the gold, and then finally I'll go with the copper. So the embossing powder can stick to like where your fingers have been and things like that, because some of the oils from your fingers can get on the card. So I'm just going to brush off any excess powder. So then you can see we've got this gorgeous ombre effect. So then I want to use this topper here, so I'm just going to cut it out quite roughly. And because this is a paper and I want it to stand off the page a bit, I'm going to add it to some cardstock. And then I'm going to cut around that with my scissors. So I cut this one out, but I decided that actually I didn't really like that on there. So I cut out this smaller one, which has more of a contrast, and I quite like that instead. So we're going to go with that one. So then I've got a strip of the red cardstock that is nearly an inch thick, and then this is just about 1/8 of an inch wider than the red strips. So I'm going to glue those together. I'm going to create a belly band for the card. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold that around to the back of the card. And then I'll just glue that together at the back. And then I'm going to add this to the belly band. So then I've got a few embellishments from my stash, and I'm just going to add them to help decorate snowflakes. You just want to make sure that you're not using anything that is too deep, because you still need to be able to slide this on and off. So you need to make sure that you've got quite flat things that you're putting on. So put a bit too much glue underneath these couple of stars, but it's fine because it will dry clear. And then I don't have any copper embellishments, so I'm going to use these Copper Penny Novo drops. Then there's that card finished. It's got loads of sparkle and that cool ombre look in the background. So then for my next card, I'm going to do the heat emboss letterpress technique. And if you've been around for a while, you'll know that I do this technique loads because it's one of my favourite heat embossing techniques. I love the effect it gives. So before we do the technique, I'm going to add some ink to my cardstock because I want green to show through. So I've got cracked pistachio here and pine needles. They're both Distress Oxide inks. And I'm just adding blobs on, and then I'm going to fill in the gaps with the pine needles. And you really don't need to be too careful with this because so little of it's really going to show through that you're not going to notice if your blending's not very good. So I'll just go back over that cracked pistachio a little. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this with the heat tool just to make it nice and dry, because this ink tends to be a little sticky. I don't want my embossing folder to stick to this and not the embossing ink. And then I'm also going to put on a little of my embossing body. So then I've got a big block here. I'm going to put on a little of this Wow ink refill. And then I'm going to take my brayer. I'm going to ink it up with that embossing refill. And then I'm going to just ink up this front piece. The front piece is the coloured piece of the embossing folder. So then I'm going to pop this in here, and then I'll close this over so this piece goes on the green. And then I'm going to emboss that in my die cutting machine. So we'll take that out. So you can see how pretty that looks already. And then I'm going to add on some copper embossing powder. So then I can heat that up. So then you'll have noticed there are a few areas around, like this one, where the embossing ink didn't stick properly to the paper. So we're just going to fill those in with this Wow embossing pen. So this is like a pen with embossing ink in it. And it's a really good little tool to have in your collection, because it means if you're doing like a panel like this, I don't know about you, but I find quite often when I'm creating embossed panels, there's something that doesn't stick somewhere. So it's really nice just to be able to fill in those gaps. So then I'll pour some more embossing powder over. Now that you can see that this panel is much more kind of filled in. So then I've cut this down to about 1/4 inch smaller than my card blank. I've just got this green A6 card blank. So that's 4 1/8 by 5 7/8 inches. And I thought it'd be nice to have like a big bow as the kind of centerpiece on the front, because I don't want to take away from this too much. So then I've got some old ribbons from my stash. And I'm just going to lay them up like that, so that you get the hint of that copper through the green. So I'm going to trim the ends off. So then let's glue this together. Now I'm going to add on the bow with a glue dot. And then I've cut this from the pack. So let's just pop that up on some foam pads. And then we've got this cute card. So then for this next card, I've cut two 5-inch red circles. That's going to be my card base. Then I've got this green one that's 3 3/4 inches. And this red one's nearly 3.5 inches. And then I've die cut this bell from white cardstock as well. So I want to heat emboss this bell. So I'm going to grab my sticky ink pad and some embossing ink, and I'm just pressing that into it. Then I'm going to pour my gold embossing powder all over that. Then I'm going to heat that up. And then I'm going to do one more layer of that. So now we've got this gorgeous piece, and it's quite thick as well because the 2 layers of embossing. So now I want to cut a piece of gold to go behind the bell piece. I want to have red behind the bow. So I'm going to trace around the outside of the bell. And then I'm going to trace through this bit that's kind of on the bow so that I get the edge. And then I can just cut that out. And I'm going to cut just inside, like just teeny tiny bit inside that line. Just so that I make sure it doesn't stick out over the die cut. And then I'm going to do the same with the bow. So then I've got a sheet of sticky dots, and I'm just going to add the bells on. And that'll just add adhesive to the back of that. It's much less fiddly than the wet glue. And then I'm going to add this behind. And then I can add the bells behind as well. So then I want to heat emboss my sentiments onto this circle. So I'm going to stamp this Season's Greetings onto here. Now heat emboss this in gold. So then I'm going to use my paper trimmer. I'm going to add in one of my 5-inch circles, and I'm going to add that in at 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to trim 1/2 inch off that side, and then I'm going to turn that round, line this up at the 4-inch mark, so I know that my line at the top's parallel, and then I'm going to just score that across. Then I can bend along the score line, and I'm going to add some glue above that score line, and then I can add my other 5-inch circle on top, and then I've got my card blank. So then I'm going to glue these circles together. Then I'm going to use foam pads to attach that to my card front. And then I'm going to add on my bells. So then I probably should have done this before I added this to my card, but I just kind of feel like it needs something a little bit extra. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue into here. And I'm going to add a little bit of gold glitter. And then I'm also going to grab my embossing pen again. I'm just going to add that in there. And then I'm going to add a bit of this red glitz embossing powder. Now I'll just heat set that. And then I think I might go in a few of these bits as well with this. And then we've got that nice kind of glittery background within the bow. And then just to add a little bit of extra bling, I'm just going to add a ring of red gems just around the outside of here. And then there's that card finish with all these nice sparkles on it. So with this next card, I've taped the stencil over a 5x5 inch white card blank. And we're going to do emboss resist. So I'm going to take my sponge dauber just as I did for the first card, and I'm going to add it through the stencil. Then I'm going to use my clear gloss Superfine embossing powder. Then I'm going to heat that up. And I realise that up to this point it's very difficult to see what we've done on camera. You can just about see maybe. But when we add on our ink, it will all become clear. So I'm going to use Salvaged Patina ink. And then you can see those snowflakes really start to show through that ink. And then to make them stand out even more, I'm just going to go over it with some dry paper towel just to get off the excess ink. So then I want to make this into a bit of a scene. So I'm going to cover this piece of paper with my embossing ink. And then I'm going to cover that with clear sparkle embossing powder, again from Wow. And then I'll heat set there. So we've got this nice glittery piece, and then I'm going to cut that in half to create kind of two snowbanks. So then I'm going to heat emboss this tree that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to do the part with the star on first because I think that will be easier in terms of placing the other one. So I'm going to stamp that one here. I'm going to heat emboss it in gold. So then I'm going to take the other piece and I'm going to position that over. And then that one I'm going to heat emboss in copper. And then I'm going to cut that up. So then I'm going to add a few gems to my tree. And I'm kind of using the actual pattern that's on there, I'm putting them over the dots on the pattern. So then let's build up the card. So I'm going to glue my snow banks onto the card. I'll raise the second one up on some foam pads. So then this one will go on like this. So I'm going to add foam pads behind the top and glue behind the bottom. And then there's that cool card finished. So for my final card, I've got a 5x7 piece of green cardstock. And then I've got 2 pieces of cardstock measuring 5x2¼ inches. I'm going to score those every ½ inch. So ½ inch, 1 inch, 1½ and 2 inches. And I'm going to create a pop-up card. So what I'm going to do is fold these on these lines. And these are kind of going to create like pillars for the card. And then what I'm going to do is add some double-sided tape to the thin panel at the end. And then I'm going to fold that over like that. And then that creates that kind of like square tube. I'm going to do that on the other one as well. So then I'm going to grab my stencil and I'm just going to heat emboss a panel on either end. So then I'm going to cover this with white embossing powder. And I should have said you only need to cover about 1 inch here. I've covered a bit more than that, but this bit's going to get covered up afterwards. And then I'm going to get my clear sparkle embossing powder ready, because what I'm going to do is heat this up and then put the sparkle on straight after so that it sticks to the embossing powder while it's still kind of melty. So then that goes straight on. And this way you can get the glitter look from the clear sparkle as well as the white look from the white. Because if you just put the clear sparkle on here, then it would go see-through and sparkly. So now hopefully you can see that that's really nice and sparkly. Then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. I'm going to get the clear sparkle ready. I'm actually taking the lid off beforehand and just putting it to one side so that I can just pour it straight on after. And I'm not worried about this here where there was like the edge of another snowflake, because that's going to get covered up. And I'm going to use this panel that is one of the cut apart pieces from the paper pad to put across there as the panel. So then I'm going to create the front panel, and to do that I've got a 5 by 5 inch piece of green cardstock. Then this piece of pattern paper is 4 3/4 inches square, and what I'm going to do is just kind of temporarily tape them together, and that way I can make sure my hole is in the same place in both. So I'm going to use 2 squares. This one's roughly 3 3/4 and this one's roughly 4 inches. So I'm going to put on the 3 3/4 inch one, and I'm just going to centre that. So I'm going to cut that through, and then I'm going to take the larger one, the one that's roughly 4 inches, and I'm just going to centre that on this piece so it creates a frame around the hole, and then I'm going to die cut that. So then I've got this frame that will perfectly fit onto the other frame. So I'm going to glue those two together. Then I've cut a piece of acetate down to fit across the back of this. So I'm going to use my tape to fix that to the back. So then I'm going to fix that across the back of here. So then I'm going to add some tape to these. So then I'm going to add this along here. Then I'm going to add some more tape to the back. And then I'm going to add that onto here. And then I'm going to press that. And this is how it will fold to go in the envelope, like this. So then I'm going to cut out the stocking from on here. So then I'm going to grab some of this ribbon, and I'm just going to create a little bow from it. Then I'm going to add these bits on. I like to add ribbons on with glue dots. I find that it just works best for them. And then I've got this Winter Wonderland sentiment that I'm going to pop up on some foam pads. And yeah, I'm going to decorate the sides with some of these enamel dots. You don't want anything that comes too deep, because otherwise it's not going to fold properly to go in the envelope. So then that's that card finished. I really like the way that looks. So then there are all 5 of today's cards. I really hope you enjoyed making them with me. I'd love to hear which is your favourite. Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and you can also find a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.